In the 20th century, we went through some cultural changes that dramatically impacted the way we view fatherhood and our fathers. Now, I confess this is the historical gospel according to me, but I believe that it's true. In the 1930s, the Depression drove many families off of the farm, away from the extended family, so they could find work in the cities. And so to a certain extent, our fathers left their heritage. They had to go away from their fathers and find a life of their own in the cities. In the 1940s, the Second Great World War came, World War II, and our fathers left our home. They left a heritage in the 30s, their home in the 40s, where they had to go off to war. Even the fathers that didn't go off to war were engaged in a full-fledged focus on saving our nation. In the 1950s, the fathers had left our heritage, they'd left our home, they left our hearts. It was the rock and roll, James Dean, rebellious generation. And the fathers that once had such a place in our hearts now had no place at all, and we were rebelling against the establishment. That went even further in the 60s with the hippie generation and the stand against the authority, the rejection of anything that spoke of authoritarianism. And so the fathers left our heads. They became irrelevant. They weren't important at all. And we began to see, even in the 70s, we began to see television programs and sitcoms that portrayed fathers as buffoons and unimportant. So what has happened over the last 50 years is that we've experienced a generation of fatherless fathers. We've experienced men who did not have role models. They had no emotional vocabulary. No one taught them how to affirm a son or to cherish a daughter, to apologize or nurture or stay emotionally stable, even to stay present. Many of our fathers loved us deeply, but they just didn't know what they didn't know, and they didn't know how to show us in ways that it could be received. We have a name for that. We call it the father wound. And many of the fathers that I speak to in this generation are still reeling from sowing the wind and reaping the whirlwind. And now we all are experiencing the father wound. Today, my guest is Bill Robison. Bill is a pastoral counselor here at Branches. He's a life coach. He and his wife Tracey have been a part of Branches from the very beginning. And Bill has a very unique story about his own father wound and how that came to be and how God has helped him to overcome that. I'm excited to have this conversation that's probably meaningful for everybody who listens, but especially for every man. You know what it's like to know the father wound. My name is Dr. Mike Courtney, and this is Extending Branches.
Welcome to Extending Branches, a mental health podcast committed to helping people recover hope, find healing, and experience growth. Extending Branches is a twice-monthly podcast from Branches, a nonprofit dedicated to compassionate mental and emotional health care rooted in Christ-centered values. Your host is Dr. Mike Courtney, founder of Branches. He is an author, speaker, and pastoral counselor who leads honest conversations about faith, emotional health, and real-life growth. Before we jump in, a quick but important note. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a replacement for professional counseling. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts or facing a mental health crisis, please reach out to a licensed professional or seek immediate help in your area. If you want to learn more about Branches or explore support options, you can visit branches.org. We're really glad you're here. Welcome to Extending Branches.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Mike, that was a very kind introduction that you just made.
Good.
And I'll just say, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge it. Of the men in my life, you're on a very short list.
Well, I appreciate that. Oh, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So thanks for saying that. Before we do, we've been at this for a long, long time. We've been friends for a long time. Yeah. I remember going to I don't know what the name of it now, Adelphia Stadium or Nissan Stadium or what, and watching you compete in a race.
Okay.
It was hot and you were just flying. I just remember going and watching
That's
that.
awesome.
That was neat. That's fun.
Yeah, it was
So
a while back.
do you,
So
do
yeah.
you cycle much now?
I really don't, Mike.
Yeah.
I will at home indoors just
Yeah.
to have some kind of fitness at the least bit. But as far as competing and all that, those kind of days are behind me for a while.
There
so.
comes a time where, my mind says I can still do it, but
Oh, wow.
body says, no, no way.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that frequently. So yeah,
That's
I
funny.
totally get it.
Well, we have picked, I don't know if you picked it or I picked it, but we have kind of some shared interest in this. We've picked a topic today that I just think is so important for everybody, but particularly for any man that would watch this, and that is this idea of father wound. It seems like in our culture, in our day and age, that almost every man has a story about their father. I always say either they grow up saying, I'm going to be just like my old man, or I'm going to be nothing like my old man. But in any case, their old man has shaped their identity and who they are. Do you find that in your counseling, this idea of father wound a lot?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of times I'll say some of the men that I just see in puddles, they're just balled up on a couch. So usually it has to do with something where they were either wounded overtly from dad or they didn't receive something that they needed to. So it absolutely affects the way they see themselves and the way they engage with others.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because these guys say, I had a good father, I had a good dad. And what they mean by that was there was nothing that he did to me.
Right.
But then what they realize is, but there were some things that I didn't get that it would have been nice if I got that. It's also interesting that you're right. The big old burly guys that, man, never shed a tear, and they come in and they start talking about their father wound.
Yes.
And that's,
They start touching on some of those type of things, and you can just see a really raw level of pain that you normally don't.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Well, speaking of raw, do you mind, part of why I invited you into this is your own story of your father, and very interesting. Do you mind let's start with that? Tell me a little bit
Absolutely.
about that.
Absolutely. My story, as you know, is fairly rare. I was born to two parents, obviously. I was their second child. My older brother is 17 years older than I am.
I was going to say, quite a bit older than you.
Yeah, same parents, and that's a lot of times there'll be a step sibling, step situation, but no, both same parents. He's 17 years older. So my father was 45, my mom was 42 when I was born. My dad was a World War II hero. Obviously my hero. Had a congenital heart disease that he battled for the majority of his adult life, which took him untimely. So he passed away when I was 9. And just as I've been, I know Tracey's podcast came out today, and you talked about the book that we just wrote, and so in that I've been really thinking a lot lately about how that impacted me. But many ways our fathers can wound us. And as you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's nothing overt, but it was things we didn't receive. And that was the case for me. So from the wound that I received from my dad predominantly was just absence. And it's not something he chose to do or he meant to do or anything like that, but just due to the fact that at 9 years old, my father was gone, and here I am to face adolescence and going into adulthood without that type of model, that type of affirmation affected me. So.
We will talk about it, and we'll, in case I forget, let me just say here, we'll put something in the show notes to remind people of the book that you and Tracey wrote called He Calls Me Daughter. But that's interesting that that father wound, it's not just for boys.
Right.
That daughters can very adversely be affected by their relationship with their father.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's something too that not to get off on a soapbox, but I think something we see more and more in our culture. Some people may not agree with this, but I see it to be true. A lot of times fathers sometimes are portrayed as being expendable. It's that maybe the role is not necessary, not important, but it plays a significant role, and I think that's by God's design. Imparts things that mothers are wonderful, but a dad imparts things on his children that a mother just can't. And vice versa.
So that's exactly right. And I talked about earlier on in the introduction to this that that culturally we made that move from fathers being so important, living on the farm, everything is centered around the father figure, until we slowly drift away, until in the 70s and 80s, the sitcoms, the things on television where fathers were buffoons. A lot of times they were absent, but if they were present, they were the foolish butt of the joke. And culturally, we've kind of made fathers to be insignificant and inconsequential. It's just not true. So yeah. So what does it look like for you when you talk to people, or even in your own life? What are some of the symptoms that you see? A guy comes in your room and you say, that guy has a father wound. What are some of the things that you look for in that?
Well, it could be a number of things. I think one way that a lot of times it may present is maybe just an avoidance of responsibility. Sometimes as a young man starts aging and maturing, a lot of times I think what we're seeing is just a reluctance to take responsibility. So we're seeing a lot of, delayed
maturation.
Failure to launch, those type of things. That can be, I think a lot of times that can be present. Maybe things like just indecisiveness, a lack of confidence, those type of things. I think because a dad, a big part of a dad's role is to impart that and help their child feel confident and taking a level of appropriate risks and those type of things. So those are pretty common.
Well, we have stories, but our fathers had stories, so they didn't. Especially now in our generation. Well, I shouldn't lump you in your generation. I'm a generation ahead of you.
Yeah.
But our fathers didn't have fathers, and their fathers didn't. And so now we're 3 or 4 generations into this where they didn't see men take responsibility or have confidence, that kind of thing. And so I think we are just kind of reaping the whirlwind of that. I have something, I'll try this out on you. I have something I use with people all the time as we talk about this. I'll say, I believe this is true, that God created our parents. He created mothers to teach us intimacy. That is about feeling safe and knowing that there's somebody that loves me. If nobody else in the world loves me, my mom loves me. And that idea of intimacy. Fathers, so intimacy from our mothers. Fathers, he created to give us identity. And he said to Adam, name the animals. It's been the job. And identity is about value and worth. And if I didn't have that, then it is hard for me to be confident or to take responsibility when I don't have that. So
In my story, I think in the ways that I didn't have identity in terms of self-confidence and those type of things, I think what's a large part of resultant of my dad's absence, one thing that he did really well was he imparted identity in me in being a part of my family.
Good.
One thing that he would always do is, if something was hard or something that I always remember him saying, but we're Robisons. And that was something I could always, I don't know what that means, but to hear him say that, I'd be like, yes, I am. And so that was something that I've always felt pride in. And that in a way, he was imparting that identity in me as being a part of a larger whole than just me.
That's good. Well, so how did you begin to see that unfold? And you have 2 children. They are adults now, and very successful, highly accomplished adults. Marty lives in North Carolina. She kind of followed in your footsteps. When we first came to know each other, you were doing medical sales and doing a great job of that. Walker is an engineer. I remember making your wife so mad when Walker came in. He's probably 3rd grade, and he said, Dr. Mike, I did not miss a single day of school. I said, Walker, why would you do that? Why?
He still talks about that, by the way. So
But so accomplished. But when did you begin to see, there's some things I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to teach them this kind of thing. Did that come up at all?
Well, for me, I think it absolutely came up when we learned we were pregnant with Marley, our first.
That sets in.
I think I was kind of confronted with that. It was like, okay, now what? Like I said, I lived with my dad on this earth for 9 years, so I had memories of that. But in terms of how do I walk it out the day to day, it was quite anxiety producing.
Yeah.
But it was also around that time where, actually a little bit later, but I was confronted or experienced a sermon series that I think of all the sermon series I've ever had in my life probably impacted me the most.
Yeah.
Louis Giglio did a series
Yeah.
probably in the early 2009s, 2010s
Yeah.
maybe, but it's called Seeing God as a Perfect Father. And
Wow.
just in that, he talked about the father wound.
Yeah.
He talked about how we heal from that is being able to understand and own
Yeah.
what we missed or what
Yeah.
did occur, but always knowing that God is a perfect father and the attributes that he imparted on our earthly dads to bestow upon us that either were or weren't for whatever reason, that he's always present with, and he does provide those things. So I think that was powerful for me to just kind of change the way that I view myself and do my best. And thank you, the very kind words, but yeah, I mean, I'm so far from perfect, and, but yeah, so I think just leaning into him is what was most impactful for me.
That's neat. Yeah, whether this is good news or bad news, I do say I don't know how to heal from the father wound apart from a connection with the Heavenly Father.
That's right.
And really, I know there are things that we both counsel people to do, and we talk about identifying that in your own self, finding good role models, do some things, but it really boils down to finding a Heavenly Father that loves you, that sees value in you, and connecting to that. So that's
right.
good. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah. So as now you're at this ripe old age of fathers, of being a father to adults. I mean, what kind of lessons have you learned, and what kind of things have you taught them, or have they taught you that you say, there's great joy in being a father now?
Oh yeah, man, so many. I don't know. I think probably the greatest lesson that I learned is just the importance of ownership. Just being able and being willing to, when you do blow it and when you know you blow it, being willing to be humble and go to them and just acknowledge you're wrong, acknowledge how you may have impacted them adversely, and just seek forgiveness. So to me, that's probably the biggest one of the biggest lessons that I've learned and try to impart and tried to live up to the best that I could.
That's good.
So
that's good.
yeah.
And we learn that from our relationship with God, of being that we can go to Him and tell Him we're wrong, and we're still loved and we're still valued, so we can go to our children.
And I think that's a part of what God, is His charge for fathers is we are to model that level of forgiveness that He affords us, and we're called to forgive others as well. And that's just becomes a model to our kids. That's just a life posture.
That's good. That's good. Well, that's good, Bill. That's so good, and you're right. It is that connection with the Heavenly Father and seeing Him love us when we've blown it, that then we can model that for our children by saying, when I'm wrong, I acknowledge that. So I have two things I'd like to ask about this. How do I help the guy who's come in and he's been a terrible father, and he knows it? That's, at least he's acknowledging. He knows it. He's taking ownership for it. But I want to start now. Maybe his kids are 15, 16, 17 years old, and how do you help the guy to start now being a better father? And then we'll talk about it in a moment. But how do you help we guys who are older to go back and address the wounds that our father creates? I like to talk. The first one, what do you say to the guy that says, man, you're right. I'm listening to this podcast and I've not been a good father. Haven't taken ownership. Now I want to. What do I do now?
Sure. Well, I think it first starts with insight and awareness.
Yeah.
Maybe helping them or to identify those ways where they feel that they have fallen short.
Yeah.
And I can't change something that I'm not aware of is going on, and at least acknowledge and take responsibility for that. So to me, that would be the first step, is kind of identifying those ways that I have missed the mark.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to, I think, what I said a minute ago, of just being humble enough to be open and willing to acknowledge that, and obviously depending upon the depth and maybe the severity or the duration of the wounding,
Right.
Being willing to just, my stance is I'm going to stay in that place of humility.
Good.
And I'm going to continue to try to right the wrong, and understand that there's going to be resistance, there's going to be pain, but I'm refusing to give up. I'm not, not, and I don't mean like forcing things to happen, but I'm committed to this relationship. I'm committed to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there and prove myself trustworthy as long
That's
as long
so
as
good.
it takes.
Yeah, I've said to some fathers before, you spent 10, 15, 20 years creating this father wound, and you can't expect to have this heart change and for your children to acknowledge that. So give it time. You have to give God time to work. And I do think that God works in such a way that maybe I've taken 15 years to create the father wound. It's not going to take 15 years to heal from it. I give it a few years and really stay patient and as you say, be present. I've got to.
Well, you've complimented me today, and I think you're the perfect example of that, of just someone who has owned his wounding and went back and repaired his relationships with his kids.
Well,
you did that over time. You did that with persistence, and I believe that we all long for that relationship, and the level that we're willing and able to do that. It's amazing the kind of repair that can happen.
Yeah,
not saying in every case, but a lot of them.
And I'm probably have some prejudice in this, but I think quite honestly, the wounds that we have gone through sometimes make us more aware, so they make us better fathers when we've gone through that. Right, sounds good. Well, so here's the other part, and this wasn't so much part of your story, I think, but maybe it is to a certain extent. What do we do with that father wound that our fathers have created? Maybe in your case, in my case, it was obviously much later, but my fathers passed away. Our fathers are dead and gone. What do we do with that father wound? And I don't want to force you, back you into a corner with this, but I feel like we have to forgive. We have to let it go. At some point, we have to say, I've just released this to you. Say something about that, about forgiving our fathers.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's just the redemptive nature of the gospel.
Yeah,
is that I sometimes I just have to choose to believe if my father had known better, he would have done better.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
And if I can just if he had the tools to give me what that's just that axiom is just so true. We can't impart on someone else that with which we don't have.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if my dad doesn't have love for himself, it's going to be hard for him to display love for others or those type of things. So I think part of it is, again, healing my wound is similar to what I said earlier. I have to go and identify the ways that I've been impacted.
Yeah.
And think just sitting in that and being willing to acknowledge that and letting that healing process take place, whether it's sitting with someone else or a group of people or recovery movement or whatever it might be, but going back and looking at the ways the impact happened. And then just as you said earlier, is at some point I've got to release it. I'm choosing to forgive. I'm choosing to cut that debt that was created with the sin or with the wrong. And I'm just giving that to God, and I'm freeing myself from that.
Yeah, that's good.
And then I think too, if possible, another way of healing is, especially if the individual is blessed to become a father themselves, is just work to create a new legacy. I'm going to give to my children maybe what I didn't receive, what I was unable to experience. I'm going to try to provide to the best of my ability. Try to provide that for them to kind of change the legacy that was created by the wound.
That's good. I've often felt like that the generational curse that the Bible talks about, the sins of the father will be visited on their children and their children's children, third and fourth generation. I've often felt like that's not God saying, I'm going to punish your great-great-grandchildren for what you did.
Yeah.
It's saying because of the wounds that you carry and the things that you do, unless this is broken, this is going to go on generation after generation after generation. So what I hear you saying is, I choose to stop this now.
Right.
I'm gonna break this now, and my children are gonna know a different father than I did. That's part of the healing process.
I mean, it's just, I don't think it's much more empowering than that to think that I can be the one that does the work to do that, or that makes that stand to change it. So that's
good.
Yeah,
Bill, I appreciate it. I mean, you've done it well, and you handle it very manly. But as you said, it's a tender story for us to begin talking about our fathers and that kind of. So thank you for being willing to do that.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Take the time to do that. Yeah, it's been really good. Josh, I'll kind of tell you this story that I did. You probably already know. Josh and I and Jacob, my two sons, went to speak for a conference in Texas a while back, and Josh spoke, and he's not Josh's not the speaker. He's not but when he does, he's very.
Absolutely.
But he spoke, and he spoke on the story of the rich young ruler in the Gospel of Mark, where he comes to Jesus, and Jesus says, "You have to sell everything," and then he goes away sorrowful because he's not willing to do that. And then Peter asked an interesting question. Peter said, "Lord, we've given up everything to follow you. What do we get out of this? I mean, this guy, what are we going to get?" And Jesus replies to Peter, and Josh pointed out that Mark tells this story differently than anybody else. Jesus says to Peter, in order to follow me, you have to give up father, mother, brothers, sisters, home, and job. But if you do, I will restore it 100-fold. Mother, brothers, sisters, home, and job. He leaves the word father out of the second list. You have to give it up, but he doesn't say he's going to restore that. Oh. And Josh said, I've come to believe that father relationship is so important that God knows he is the only one who can really fulfill that. So he has to do that. And I've said all the time, I heard Josh say that, and on one hand, I was so proud of him, and on the other hand, I thought, no, I want to be the one. I know.
That's great. That's
yeah.
awesome.
So it's God. I mean, you said it so well, Bill. It's God that can heal it, and only God.
That's right.
Thanks for talking to me.
Oh, you're welcome, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a great conversation about the father wound, and Bill's done such a great job with it. I think 2 or 3 things come to my mind. Yeah, you have to be aware of it. You have to acknowledge it. You have to address the particular issues that it brings up. You have to talk about it, understand it, and you have to forgive. You have to let it go. You have to at some point say, as Bill said, if my father had had the tools I had, he probably would have done a better job. And so you have to let that go. When we do those things, God is able to come in and change this for us and heal us from the father wound and allow us to pay that forward and to be good fathers to our children and to our children's children. If you'd like to know more about extending branches or branches itself, you can go to our website, branches.org. Also, we would love it if you would like and share this podcast. You can watch the podcast on YouTube. You can listen to it wherever your favorite podcast platforms are. There is a plethora of other information available. We try to be informative, inspirational, and hopefully entertaining. We do a weekly podcast, Monday Matters. We do a daily devotional thought, just a sentence called Take a Minute, Make a Difference. We have newsletters, all kinds of information to help you live a healthier, happier, and more holy life. Jesus said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Our goal is to continue extending branches.